Welcome to our present state versus history on Speaker. Here we are focused on the current events of our culture through the principles of our history, trying to make sense of the culture and the mindset of today. I am your host, Ray Mayfield. Well, hello, folks. Here we are again back on the pod. I realize it's been a few weeks since we've released any new episodes. We've been busy, been down to Vicksburg, Mississippi, and spent a few days ministering down there and trying to get things back into a routine since we've been back. Just want to mention again our website for the truegospelchurch.org. Check us out there. Check out the links to the New Life Fellowship with Pastor Mark and Bonnie Buzzard, who we went with down to Vicksburg and minister the Word of God with some folks. And the many different things there with the Black Robe Regiment and of course our present state versus history podcast that we're listening to here, and our Facebook page with the same title, Our Present State versus History. Check us all out there. Check out the National Center for Constitutional Studies website there. The link is there. And the link is there for the Spreaker podcast platform. You can catch this podcast on other platforms, but Spreaker is our home, I guess you could say, platform. We're going to get into a little bit today about juries of all things. This deal that's going on in our nation with President Trump and all the other nonsense that's happening across this country with these protests on these college campuses and all these things going on. I believe that the reason all of these things are happening is to open the eyes of the average everyday people that haven't been paying attention, all of us, because the truth of the matter is all of these events that have taken place in the last 4 or 5 years, the one thing that they should be accomplishing is making it obvious to the people of how bad the corruption has gotten into our system and how far away from our Constitution that we are. And it makes it so blatantly obvious that the reason for these things is so that we will know that we have a responsibility. If we don't address these issues, we don't have any excuse. You see, I see the hand of God moving throughout this whole episode, and it's not the things that most of these talking heads are talking out here in the media and the different radio programs and different shows. And, the last podcast we did, I kind of got off on a rant here where I'd been hearing a lot about being, so opinionated and all these different things. But we try to stay pretty close to the facts here. And most of the information that I'm putting out here for the listeners or for anybody to come on to here is textbook stuff. My opinion and my congenders, they get involved because, I'm the host. But the reality of it is, this whole mess that's going on in this country should be making it blatantly obvious to the citizens of this nation how far away from a republic that we really are for what this nation was intended to be. The episodes that's been taking place with Donald Trump, regardless of what you think of Donald Trump, the president of the United States, you should be taking note to the events that are unfolding and the way that they are trying to destroy him because he's standing up for, I guess I should say, the constitutional standard. I'm not one of these people that, it's all about Trump, but I am all about our Constitution and about the things that have been taking place and how crazy they are. It's like this crusade or rebellion or whatever you want to call it that's just taking place on these college campuses. I believe it was the president of Columbia University that I was listening to talking about the agitators, he called them, that started or were instigating and keeping all of these protests going on. It was part of the group that took over the Dean's Hall and barricaded the doors. Said they weren't even students. They weren't even supposed to, members of the college. And my immediate question is, so why were they even on campus? Why are we even allowing them on campus? Forget about the subject matter of whatever they can chant whatever they're chanting. The reality of it is, if we were following our rule of law like we're supposed to in this country, they wouldn't even been permitted to be on the campus in the first place. See? So why were they there? That's the question. Why were they allowed to stay to begin with? And this stuff that's going on in New York with Trump is what I can see as a display, if you will, of what happens when we allow our court systems to go amok. And when we read into our Constitution in Article 3, which is dealing with the judicial powers, and Section 2, it goes into the detailed list of the cases or the law equalities that the judicial system is going to be directly involved in. I'm not going to read through all that, but in the second paragraph, it says, in all cases affecting ambassadors, other public ministers and counselors, and those which the state shall be party, a Supreme Court shall have original jurisdiction. In all other cases before mentioned, the Supreme Court shall have appellate jurisdiction, both as law and fact. That phrase is very important. We remember that. Both as law and fact, with such exceptions and under such regulations as the Congress shall make. Paragraph 3 says, the trial of all crimes, except in cases of impeachment, shall be by jury. And such trial shall be held in the state where the said crimes shall have been committed. But when not committed within any state, the trial shall be at such place or places as the Congress may by law have directed. And then Section 3 goes into treason and different things. But the important phrases here are, in the court, the jurisdiction within that court is both for law and fact, okay? The Constitution establishes that. That's where the authority is, in both law and fact. And now the trial by all crimes except for crimes of impeachment shall be by jury, okay? So we're going to talk a little bit about juries, because the run amok system in our court system today is the reason why this theatrical performance has been allowed to carry on as long as it has through our court systems with Donald Trump and other instances. I mean, Elon Musk here a while back, he was in the courts, and I mean, every time we turn around, we're hearing about our courts are being used, to decide some of these things that are basically, they should have really never been into the court system. And if the court system had been allowed to function in the fashion that it is supposed to be functioning in, they would have never gone as far to the point as they were. And in this little episode, you're going to just have to bear with me, because I'm going to do a lot of reading. And I'm reading right out of a textbook, okay? Textbook that used to be commonplace education in our education system, which is not so much today. This textbook that I'm using is from the National Center of Constitutional Studies, okay? And it's a college course. but it's not necessarily one that was in the public school system, although it might have been. I mean, it's got the credentials to be so. Okay, um, and we're dealing with the legal, should I say, precedents that our founding fathers intended for juries and the reason for juries and how they were supposed to function into our court system. The original American law and judicial system, our juries were called common law jurors. Okay, that was the name or the title that was used was common law jurors, and the original American common law system. I'm just going to start reading out of this textbook to you because this is not opinion. This is not congender this is the facts. This is the way it's supposed to operate. Okay, up until 1895, Americans enjoyed all of the power of the original common law jury. This was far rather more powerful instrument of justice than our current jury system today. In fact, the founders considered it the foremost defense in the American legal structure to protect the people against oppressive laws passed by the legislator or abuse of judges deliberately misrepresenting the law. The common law juror not only had the power to determine the facts, but it also had the authority to determine the law. It could determine what the law meant and whether or not the jury considered it constitutional. The jury could even ignore the law if it felt it would cause an injustice if applied to the case at hand. Under these circumstances, the jury was allowed to hear the arguments of the attorneys on both sides as the meaning of the law and how it should be applied in the particular case. Furthermore, although the judge interpreted the law for the jury, they were not bound to accept his interpretation. In other words, the interpretation of the judge was merely advisory. The jury was free to reach its own conclusions as to just what the law required. Such were the powers of the original American common law jury. The powers of the common law jury was stated by Chief Justice John Jay, the first jury trial before the Supreme Court in 1794. The case was entitled Georgia versus Bradford. This was a case in which the Supreme Court had original jurisdiction, and therefore the jury was implied to determine both law and the facts. In his instructions to the jury, the Chief Justice outlined independent authority of the jury in those days. This is a quote from Chief Justice John Jay. It may not be amiss here, gentlemen, to remind you of the good old rule that on question of fact, it is the providence of the jury. On questions of law, it is the providence of the court to decide. But it must be observed that the same law which recognizes this reasonable distribution of jurisdiction, you have nevertheless the right to make upon yourselves to judge of both, and to determine the law as well as the facts controversy. On this and on every other occasion, however, we have no doubt you will pay that respect which is due to the opinion of the court. For as on one hand it is presumed that the juries of the best judges of the facts, it is on the other hand presumable that the courts are the best judges of the law. But still, both objects are lawfully within your power of decision. That's a statement by Chief Justice Jay emphasizing that the jury had the ability to decide what had been given to the courts of the authority in that jurisdiction, which we read in our Constitution, paragraph 2 of Article 3, both the law and the facts. See, that power was given to the jury to decide. You say, well, what's the reason for that? Well, the reason for that was because the jury was the safety net against arbitrary imprisonment and arbitrary criminal prosecution. You can read some of the quotes from Thomas Jefferson, who emphasized the principle of handling a case not alone, but he decides the law if the jury trial. The jury makes the final judgment on both the law and the facts, Jefferson wrote. He is the one who decides, those jurors of 12 decides how these things go, because they knew that they needed to protect against the overreach and the zealousness of tyranny. And it doesn't have to just be a king. You got these overzealous prosecuting attorneys that want to arbitrarily file charges against people. We have magistrates who just arbitrarily want to arrest people and stop them from being able to run for office or do things in the public thing, which is exactly what's going on with Trump. They're doing exactly the things that the kings used to do when they were in control of things to keep the people from being heard. They put these things in place with this jury trials in order to prevent that from taking place. But you see, in 1895, it gradually was being encroached upon, but up until about 1895, we have a case called Sparf and Hansen versus the U.S. And in that case, the pressure by the courts to deprive the jury of the right to find the law as well as the facts finally prevailed after the case of Sparf versus U.S. in 1895. From then on, the strict instructions of the judges defined for the jury precisely what the judge considered to be law. And the jury was left without the option to reaching its decision regardless of how unjust or unconstitutional the jury might consider the law to be. And that's when things really began to change. And then you go into the history of the whole jury system, and you'll find some very interesting facts, because we have the jury system originated as part of the English heritage and spread around the world with the expansion of the British Empire. However, except for the United States, the Anglo-American jury system has almost become extinct. England herself limits the jury trials to a small number of cases by statute. The same tendency has been followed in her various commonwealths. Hungary abandoned the jury system in 1919. Germany followed suit in 1924. None of the fascist countries ever allowed juries to function. The entire Soviet bloc eliminated whatever jury system might have existed. Japan abolished the jury system in 1943. France never restored the jury system after the Nazi occupation of World War II. And today, the United States conducts an estimated of 120,000 jury trials annually, which about 90% of those such trials held throughout the world. Because of the expense of the jury trial, there was a temporary trend to eliminate such trials in the United States for minor offenses. However, in 1968, the Supreme Court held Duncan versus Louisiana at the defense of the legal right to a jury trial in any case where the penalty exceeds 6 months. Although the competence of a jury system is somewhat questioned, a recent survey showed that 7,000 jury trials, the judges agreed with the decisions of the jurors in 78% of the cases, and has suggested that this is above as high as the percentage of cases where judges agreed with each other. A variety of questions, and some during debates, which were answered by the founders as followed. And it goes on to what is the importance of the jury trials. And it gives quotes of Isabel and Henry, Patrick Henry, and different ones as they were talking about the reason for the jury trial, which it comes down to the biggest two things they were concerned about was these arbitrary imprisonments and these arbitrary criminal prosecutions of these people that just making up stuff and arresting people and putting them in jail. And see, and this interpretation, this ability to be able to interpret the laws, whether they are just laws and whether they apply to that case, is vital in the jury having the power to make qualified decisions according to each situation as it is brought forward, and make sure that the laws are not being twisted around and perverted for the use of another individual, because they also did not want this power being abused so that they could just go out and make things up in order to bring charges against people, to, you know, in other words, change the meaning of the law just so they can use it for their benefit. Which, does that sound familiar? That's kind of what's going on in our court systems now, isn't it? We're calling one thing okay for one person and not okay for another person. It's crazy, because we've taken this power. This is just another one of those safety nets that have been put in place in our Constitution. And because we're not reading this Constitution, and because we're not holding people to the strict rendering of the Constitution, we're allowing these erosions into our daily operations, and we're seeing these things going on, like what's going on with New York and Trump, which should have never, ever gotten to the place that it has now. I mean, for Pete's sake, the fines that they've incurred for what their so-called crimes or penalties of what's been committed, it's absurd. And if they can do that to him, my friend, what are they going to do to you and I? I mean, I don't know about you, but I don't have all kinds of money and resources for people to defend me. I don't have millions of dollars to pay in fines and just keep battling against the battle, see. But they're out to destroy this man simply because he is a political rival. Now, regardless of what you think of Trump, regardless of what you think of the political players of the day, we're talking about the principles of a republic. You see, this is not a democracy, it's a republic. We do not have social classes in this country. We have people who have reached different levels of success by their own abilities and their own accords, because everybody in this country could become a multi-billionaire if they decide that's what they want to do. The opportunities are there. Well, does it mean they're all going to succeed? Nope. You have the ability to fail in this country as well. You have the ability to succeed. But the way these things are being destroyed, if we do not restore, I keep going back to the big three that I keep calling, which are the main things to set this country back in the power of the people, is unfreezing our number of state representatives, appealing the 17th Amendment, and ratifying the Jefferson Amendment to get these court systems back in control. Because by our Constitution, when a judge tells a jury that they have to adhere to a strict rendering of what he says the law is, he is limiting the function and capacity that jury actually has within their own authority to operate in that court system for whatever the purpose they've been called to. And most of the people sitting on these jury trials, they do not understand this, and they let the court systems hold over them what they can and cannot do when it comes to law, and therefore they are not having the tools that they should have at their disposal to make a qualified decision. It ain't no wonder they don't let me sit on too many juries, huh? Every time they've ever called me to jury duty, I never make it past the sift out pool. Well, I wonder why. Because I believe in fair and unbiased trials. And speaking of that, another thing, there is no jury in this country that you could pull together for Donald Trump's trials that is not biased in some way, that has not been tainted. Nobody in this United States is in a place of neutrality in that case. The judge, the lawyers, nor the jury members. And so if you don't find 12 honorable people and give them all the tools at their disposal, which is what our Constitution has allowed them to have, where they can rightly divide the truth. It's amazing. The Word of God talks about something like that, rightly dividing the word of truth. That doesn't have to just apply to the Bible, you know. The word of truth in the court of law, of course, our entire court system is based after the Word of God. So there you go. We start running these things back in the divine purpose of divine providence according to God, the Creator, and we start doing things according to His moral code, and we will come out on the winning side every time. But we've come to a place in this country to where we will have no excuse. And I believe that's the purpose for all of these things coming to surface. We're seeing so much corruption come up. It is so obvious. We are seeing so many areas come up that are being exposed to the public eye, like these jury situation. This whole thing with Trump has brought this whole thing up. This whole thing with Trump has brought this whole overreach of our judicial system up. This whole deal with Trump has brought in the whole violations of our order of constitutionality in the order of the executive branch and the orders of our judicial branch. All of these things have been coming to the surface because there's no place to hide now. And so, like we said on this program before, our whole purpose here is to make sense out of the historical application to our culture today. And this, my friend, is just one example of where we better wake up. And as God's told us to pray, He says, "Watch ye therefore and pray always, that you are found worthy to escape the things to come to pass in this earth and stand before the Son of Man." And my friend, if you haven't accepted Jesus Christ as your Lord and Savior, oh, do it while the Lord is drawing you nigh, for today is the day of salvation. Now is the appointed time. And there are multitudes in the valley of decision. And we are running out of time because as we see these things daily approach, we need to be asking the Lord to find us worthy to escape these things. And I can see I'm out of time, well over time again. So I'm going to leave it with that. Have a wonderful day till we meet again on the pod.